All right, you guys, you want to get started? Okay. Welcome to Supper Club. We made it despite all the odds. Here we are. Thank you guys so much for being here. Just so you know, we are recording this so that we can share it later. So just so you know, I feel like I should put that out there. So tonight we are going to be talking about how to create everyday magic in the midst of difficult times. Obviously now we have an incredible panel. I'm really excited because this panel is super diverse in their experiences and their expertise. So we're going to get a wide array of answers to these questions tonight. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat box to the side. As it comes up, you can either write it down or you can immediately type it in. We always have a ton of questions at the end of Supper Club, so we're hoping that's still the case now. Before we really get into it, I would love if everyone would type in, before we say anything about it, type in their definition of what magic is to them, or what they think it is, or how they perceive it to be. You can just type it into that chat box. I'm going to move on because otherwise we're all just going to sit here awkwardly, but take your time, type it in whenever you get a chance. But I wanted to do that because I think it's something really different to everyone. And I love that about it. I love the concept of magic. As a child, I was like really interested in fantasy magic and in fantasy worlds and literature. And that kind of evolved over time into this idea that I could create magic in my own life through being really intentional about what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, what I'm saying, how I'm feeling, believing, all of that kind of stuff. And TRILUNA is really founded on that principle. Let's see, some of the things we're getting are beauty in the unexpected, exactly. Directing my life force in an intentional way to make shit happen, yes. Magic is transformation, transforming even the ordinary into something exciting. Imagination, believing in the unknown. All about what we cannot see and cannot quantify. Alexa, I really like that. Jordan, things happening with no clear explanation. Absolutely. Wonder, action with no specific intention. Yeah. And so I think what we wanted to bring to the table tonight is that in the midst of all the chaos and stress and fear that it's really easy to get trapped in, we want to say that you have access to magic in a very real way. And we're going to talk about very different ways in which we explore that topic and access that topic. And so I'm going to jump right into it. We know this panel really well. We actually met Michael Warren. Can you say hi so that you see your face?
Hey, how's everybody doing?
There's his face. So we met Michael at the Mind Body Magic Festival that we did with Emily, who's also on this call. Hey, Emily. And he was a panel speaker then, and we just really fell in love with his philosophy. And I'm not going to give away what he does. I think he can probably tell it way better than I can. But we've been a fan of his ever since. Alexa, you want to say hi?
Hi. Sorry, I'm writing notes.
Oh, you're perfect. I've got a notepad too. We actually made Alexa an unintentional mentor of ours, like really early on. We didn't give her much choice in the matter, but luckily she was very gracious about it. When we were first starting out, we met up with her and we're like, we don't know what to name our company. We're having a really hard time picking a name. We don't know what we should do. And she basically was just like, you're going to be okay. Just take a deep breath. You'll survive this. And she's stayed a mentor and become a really good friend of ours. So we're thrilled to have her on the panel. And Jane, I met not too long ago. You want to say hi?
Hello.
We met at a networking event, I think, like for people in the events industry, called Heels and Handshakes. And I was very drawn to her, and I waited all night long to talk to her because I was very nervous. And then, of course, she was incredibly gracious and kind, and we've stayed in touch ever since then as well. And without further ado, I can sit here and talk about how much I love them all night, but I'm going to let them, and Sarah's video might be off. We'll let her introduce herself at the end. She's going to be doing the music, so we'll give her some peace for right now. But Alexa, do you want to start with your story and who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Alexa Halsey, and I'm the owner of Encircle Acupuncture. We've been in business for 10 years, and we provide acupuncture in a community setting on a sliding scale of nope, $20 to $40 per treatment. We have 2 clinics, our original clinic in East Nashville, and then we also opened up a clinic in Bellevue several months ago. And our mission is to make acupuncture affordable and accessible to everyone. We truly believe in the power of acupuncture. And so we do that by treating everyone together in one big space. That allows our acupuncturists to treat a lot of people at one time, which allows us to charge less. And then there's also this great added benefit of people healing together in a community, which is super powerful. And so the way that we deliver acupuncture is not only inexpensive and accessible, but it's really powerful and community focused, and it's just a beautiful thing.
We were meant to be friends, I think, from the very beginning.
Yes.
Thank you, Alexa. Okay, Michael, tell us your story.
Yes, well, thank you. My name is Michael Warren. I'm a Nashville-based author and speaker and coach, and I've worked with men in all stages of relationship. The book that I wrote, which it's crazy, it just fell out of the sky here. It's called Marriage Declassified, a non-clinical and non-clerical answer to what I'm getting into. And the reason I put that subtitle on there is that I don't have a PhD. I'm not a psychologist. I'm also not a pastor, but I am a guy who figured out how to connect with my wife in a way that helps create beautiful things into my relationship. And so I took that experience and figured out a way to put that into a framework, if you will, because I want people to have the same success in their relationships that I've had with mine. So I took all the content from the book and structured into a online curriculum that I call the Pro Husband Program. Pro being professional. Everybody wants to kind of reach that top tier, in their respective industry. And so the premise for that came out of a section in the book where I looked at the fact that if in a professional setting, if you want to get to the corner office, if you want to get to the top floor, there's a clearly defined path on how to get there. You know what certifications you got to have. You know what relationships you need to have. You know how much time and title you need to have. And so I said, if we can have that clear of a model in our professional lives, what would happen if we could copy and paste that, if you will, and put it into our personal relationships? Could we have success? So basically, I spent about 1.5 years trying to develop some content and develop a delivery vehicle for it. And so that's how Pro Husband came along. But essentially, Pro Husband is a professional strategy for the most important role of a man's life.
I already have so many questions for all of you, so I'm a little padding at the end. Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane. I am an aura photographer and aura reader. I run Tertiary Sight. Tertiary Sight is an aura photography experience here in Nashville. I have a studio in East Nashville, as well as I do events. So, aura photography. An aura is like a human energy field. And I have a highly specialized camera that it's a biofeedback imaging color spectrometer. And I still feel like a Ghostbuster, even though I say that all the time. But the camera itself has hand sensors that are electromagnetic receptors. They take biofeedback data, and the camera itself is able to take that biofeedback data and, using some algorithms, able to translate those frequencies into the corresponding color on film. And I pulled up an example and then let my phone go to sleep. So here's an example of what the photos look like if you don't already know. That's me. So I run Tertiary Sight aura photography. I always say, like, hashtag see yourself in color. There's so many ways we see ourselves, and I want to give people a way to see themselves that is a tool for self-knowledge, right? Knowing what your energy is like, what color, where, how bright, is just a really powerful tool for self-knowledge. And so that's what I focus on, giving people a third way to see themselves, Tertiary Sight.
That's awesome. I'm gonna dig right in with you, Jane. So your company, on the website, it says that you work at the intersection of mysticism and technology, right? Mm-hmm. So tell us how you define magic and the role it plays in your life and your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like, ooh, it's magic, So I use a couple of definitions for magic. A big thing is the Pam Grossman definition. Magic is action with specific intention. And so, like, you know, you put these big intentions into the universe, that action that comes with it, the action from the universe, the action from you. To me, I think that's magic. Thinking about how that plays in my business, you know, I feel like there is definitely something really magic about seeing this picture of yourself with this glowing halo around you. And so for me, you know, people come in and I want to give them a magical experience, an experience to see themselves, to explore themselves in a way they haven't before, and to be really present with people and to be able to break down what the colors and where the colors are and what it means, to really give them all this, you know, this information about themselves. To me, that's magic. Because, you know, we're taking action. It has the specific intention of deeper self-knowledge. The other thing I think about a lot is the idea of magic is wonder, right? It's this great mystery. And we get so bogged down, right? Like with the mass chaos that is our world, with the day-to-day things we have to do to just be a person. And I really wanted to be able to give people a piece of wonder, something to marvel at, something to stand in awe of, and something that was an invitation to really explore this great mystery that is the self. And for me, that's really at the core of my business by doing the aura photography and the aura readings.
So there's magic in actually pulling people out of the everyday of their everyday life.
Absolutely.
Do you have like an example of a time someone has come in and gotten a reading that they totally didn't expect and how it created better introspection for them?
Yeah, you know, I'll give an example. I had a gentleman in my shop. He was pretty skeptic, to say the least. And, you know, with skeptics who like to pay me to do the thing I do, my answer is always yes. And so he had recently retired, and he was in a really big transitional time. And as much as I think he didn't want to admit it, you know, it was really appealing to him because he was going through these major changes in his life and was looking for something to kind of land on. So we did the photo, we did the reading. He was very much so blue, which is the throat chakra in relation kind of to truth. And, you know, really talking about through that with him and the other colors and the things. But for him, you know, to see himself, to see the way he felt reflected on film was actually a really big moment for him. And to the point where the next day he actually came back to the shop and apologized to me.
Wow.
Yeah, he said he didn't want to do it in front of his wife, so he did come back the next day, but actually apologized for kind of being so skeptic, which I was like, hey, you get to, that's your business, you get to do what you want. But that one has always really stuck out to me because that was such a unique experience.
I think that's really interesting. And we're going to dig into like skeptics and all that a little bit later, but I think there is something really interesting that happens when you can suspend disbelief, even temporarily, in search of magic or in search of deeper meaning or whatever that is. And having an actual medium where you can do that is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I have done it and I really want to try it.
One of these days.
Soon, when we can be in the same room again, we'll do it.
Yeah, we'll be there soon. I'm going to chime in on that. And we're going to talk about how your hair is magic later, but I'll put it back on you.
Oh, you know what I didn't do is tell everyone who we are.
Wow. Hey, I'll slide in here. Hi, guys. We are TRILUNA Wellness. We are an experiential wellness company that specializes in events, retreats, and curriculum for both corporate and community organizations. Basically, we make wellness fun. We are here for any of your wellness needs. And I'll go on mute.
So if you can't tell, Ashley is the head of sales at our company. We are both yoga teachers and health coaches, and we had a real desire to build community, which is why the three people that we have on the panel are here, because they have similar interests in building community. We think that a bigger community, better community, deeper communities benefit the individual in a really significant way, which is why we're here. We do supper clubs once a month. This is the third. This is the first virtual one we're doing. I think we forgot, and I assumed that everyone knew who we are, but that's probably not true. So sorry for the interlude, but I want to move on to Alexa for a second, because your background and your training is in Eastern medicine, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So has your background informed your definition of magic, and how do you differentiate the science from the mysticism in that space? Is it necessary that those two things are separated? Do they need to be? Or how does a misunderstanding of what magic is play into people's understanding of acupuncture?
Okay. That's a long question.
It is.
So I'm going to break it down a little bit. So yes, my background is in Eastern medicine, and sometimes you hear terms traditional Chinese medicine, traditional Oriental medicine, Eastern Asian medicine. Those terms are all interchangeable. And so I love some of the definitions of magic that people were writing down, and I wrote some notes down because one person said magic is things happening with no clear explanation, and someone else said magic is directing life force in an intentional way. And I feel like that's like my job description, is directing energy and things happening with no clear explanation. And so really my coworkers and I will joke that we get paid to do magic, because we're able to provide treatments in a way that people don't really understand. And we understand the theories behind what we're doing, but it still feels like magic to us sometimes. So if somebody comes to the acupuncture clinic for back pain, then we'll put a few needles in their hands and feet, and then their back feels better. I mean, that to me it feels like magic, because there's not that clear explanation of it. We can't measure it, we can't see it, we can't quantify it. And so to me, magic it's almost like having faith that the things that we can't see are still there. And in terms of wellness, that the things that are happening in our body, it's the faith that we do actually have some control over that, and that we can direct our own energy in some way. So one of the other things that I was thinking, so Elizabeth, you said something about separating the science from the mysticism. And in traditional Chinese medicine theory, like there's really no separation of anything. Everything is together. And at its very core, traditional Chinese medicine starts with a theory of yin and yang. And so that's dual opposites, these universal forces that exist everywhere that are always changing, and they're never static. And you never have complete or ultimate yin or ultimate yang. Every yin contains the seed of yang, and vice versa. And so science and mysticism are sort of yin and yang pairs in that way. On the science side, you're wanting cold, concrete, hard facts. And then on the mysticism side, it's belief in the unseen. And Chinese medicine incorporates all of those, and doesn't necessarily see a distinction. And for me, in my own practice, I don't really make a distinction between those two. If I'm treating someone for something like a physical ailment like back pain, they're coming to me for help with their pain. But anybody who's ever been in pain knows that pain doesn't just affect you physically. It affects your mood. It affects your emotions. It affects you on multiple levels. And so traditional Chinese medicine isn't a compartmentalized type of medicine. There's the science and the mysticism, and actually sometimes there's a temptation in our culture to try to explain everything, why something works, and as acupuncture has become more mainstream in the West, there have been a lot of efforts and good efforts to try to understand how it works and how to deliver it in the best possible way, to have so that more people can experience the benefits of it. And so one way that we as a culture have tried to do that is by designing research studies to prove that acupuncture works for something. And it's so interesting. Sometimes the research studies have really unexpected results. There's something called sham acupuncture, where in a research study there might be a group that's getting the real acupuncture and the group that's getting the sham acupuncture. And the sham acupuncture is just an acupuncture needle being placed in an area that's not an accepted acupuncture point. And sometimes the sham acupuncture outcomes are as good as the quote real acupuncture outcomes. And it just shows that trying to place this type of medicine into a strict scientific method Western box just doesn't necessarily work that well. So for me, I don't really separate the mysticism from the science.
It does seem like acupuncture straddles that line in a way that a lot of other healing modalities don't. It's like even my friends who are doctors who are naturally skeptical are like, yeah, acupuncture, I mean, it works. I don't know why it works, but I mean, I guess it works.
Yes. We hear that from so many people, and especially people who are physicians or scientists or researchers. And yes, they say all the time, we don't know why it works, but it works. And we have a lot of doctors or nurse practitioners who will refer their patients to us because their patients have come back to them and said, hey, this works for me. I'm not having to take as much pain medication, or I've been able to cut back on my antidepressants because I'm doing acupuncture and it's helping me. And so I love seeing that acceptance by the Western medical community and being willing to say, hey, we don't know why this works, but it's working. And acupuncture's been around for thousands of years. We wouldn't keep doing it if it weren't working.
That's true. That's awesome. I love this conversation because I think we heard some of the same thing from Jane, and we, Michael's background is a little different maybe from the rest of us, but I think we see often that even without an explanation, if something works, it works. And that's what I think magic is for us, especially for TRILUNA right now. It's just like, if it works, it works. And as long as it's, all the companies and people espousing it are being responsible with how they're doing that, I think it's an incredibly powerful tool.
Agreed.
Thank you, Alexa. All right, let's talk to Michael for a minute because he has a little bit of a different background than the rest of us. He works so you work with men or couples, or exclusively men?
Well, both. I mean, my focus is on men because I think if we're honest about it, like women have a ton of resources when it comes to things like self-help and forums, for helping them out in relationships. But guys, there's very little out there to help inform us how to be effective mates in a relationship. I always tell guys, if you think about it, who in your family, who in your life that you've come across, who actually sat you down and sort of poured into you, look, when you get married, this is what it's going to take. A lot of what we get, coming up is just merely cliche, and it's void of any detail. It's void of any, anything that you can sort of, wrap your hands around, so you're basically set out onto this journey, with this woman that you find, you say, okay, for me, I met my wife and I just knew like within 90 days, okay, this is it. Your boy's going to hang up his cleats and, we're going to ride off into the sunset. But I quickly realized after we got back from our honeymoon, I said, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. In the next year and a half, was full of examples that I didn't know what I was doing. And so basically, for me, that feeling is bad. That feeling sucks when you want to be there for your wife, when you want to connect, when you want to, make her happy. But, you just realize how unprepared you are. And so for me, tying it back into our theme, with magic, which I love the question and I love the term magic because it's not a term that I use very often. And so I had to stretch myself. And so I started out by going and just, starting the most basic place I could. I said, let me just Google it and see what the actual definition is. So the definition that I found on Google was the power to apparently influence the course of events by way of mysterious or supernatural forces. And so when I sat on that for a while, I thought about it and I said, okay, yeah, I actually can see how those fit with what I do, because basically the tools and the strategies and the mindset that I offer my clients, basically that is their way to influence the occurrence of events in their relationships. And the fact that it's not natural to them that's where the mysterious and spooky part comes in, because they always look back and say, man, this was so simple. It's like, yeah, if I can show you how to position yourself, how to communicate better, how to give you the vision, if you will, to see the things and understand how your woman exists in the world. I mean, she has a completely different experience in the world than you do as a man, and so the more that you can learn about that, then the more information you have, the better decisions you can make, right? So essentially, all those things put together, I've seen, magic, as we're calling it now, just time and time again, where people have come in. I've seen guys have been frustrated, they've been lost, but then, 90 days, 6 months later, I'm calling them and I'm like, hey, what's going on? They're like, absolutely nothing. And that's the magical part about it. So it's good. I mean, so I think to the extent that we're trying to define magic as it pertains to what I do, that would be it.
Yeah, that Michael, I was so drawn to you from the beginning because it is so uncommon to see men having these conversations, and especially to be on a stage in front of a crowd talking about
Absolutely.
These things. And when you and I talked the other day, we talked a little bit about how we have for a long time now been trying to redefine the role of women, but we have not yet redefined the role of men, at least at the same speed. And
Yes.
I think there's some real magic in you getting up now and saying, okay, it's time to start redefining this, and then redefining them together. Do you find it's harder to get men to open up because they're not used to that? Or how do you help break down those barriers to get to them?
So I'll tell you in two parts. Let me say first, in order for guys to open up, like, they want to have these conversations. Like, we have structured things in society in a way that there's very little room and very few opportunities for a guy to be vulnerable, without without either being penalized or being punished in some form or fashion, whether that be by his spouse, or by his friends or what have you. But my hunch when I started out on this journey was, I said, I've got a sneaking suspicion that if you can create a forum where guys understand that they're not going to be judged and they're not going to be penalized for being honest, with whether it be bad information or, having no information, that I feel like something constructive can come out of it. And so what I saw with my first pilot group, which I still keep in contact with now, it was amazing because I built in about 3 hours of content and Q&A. The first hour and a half was spent just complete with these 6 guys just gushing stuff. And I've seen that dozens and dozens of times. So what I know to be true is that men do want to have these conversations. They do want to talk about these things. These things are important to them. They want to come home and have a peaceful environment. They want to see the woman in their life happy. They want to connect. They want to be able to, drop the armor, if you will, and be vulnerable for a moment, but then still be respected, after that moment. And so I know for a fact that men want to have these conversations. It's just time that we need to create more forums and give them, like my slogan is, don't wait for permission to be great in your relationship. Is we've got to give them permission to say, okay, look, it's okay for you to ask these questions. It's okay for you not to know, because the reality is, if we're honest, like, we've done a horrible job as a culture in preparing men to enter long-term relationships.
Just out of curiosity, is there a single cliche that you hear all the time that you either think is hilarious or that like really bothers you?
I've got a bag full of those.
All right, let's hear it.
So the first one, it's the most common one, which is, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy, and so, yes, that's true. I've had plenty of moments where my wife was not happy, and subsequently I was not happy just because of the energy, and the rough exchanges, or silent treatment, what have you, because when we're upset, when our hearts are hurting, we do all kinds of crazy stuff, to each other in response to that. But the problem I have with that is that, just think about it. If a man has, thrown his lot in with his wife and said, okay, look, we're going to put all our resources together, and all of my time, all my energy, all my physical labor. And basically the cliche is telling me that everything is pointed at you solely. Then where's the provision for me as the other participant in that relationship? I think if we wrote that down on paper and asked anybody to sign up for it, say, here, I want you to sign up for a relationship where you're going to be required to give everything solely for this person's entertainment, this person's enjoyment, they're prospering in the relationship, nobody would sign that piece of paper. But unfortunately, that's how it ends up. So a lot of guys, because they don't have any other narratives to challenge that, they go in, and that's why they're like, oh, I just want to make you happy. I just want to make you happy. And it's like, well, no, look, man, happiness that's an individual quest. That's my truth, is that, I'm solely responsible for my happiness, and my wife is solely responsible for her happiness. Now, where the magic comes in, ding, 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 gold star for using the theme word, where the magic comes in is that if we're talking to each other, if we're communicating and we're understanding each other's needs and desires, we can contribute to an environment where happiness is possible more often than not. So for me, like my exercise is very important to me. So that's one of the things that makes me light up. That's one of the things that I had as a constant in my life when my wife met me. And that's part of what made me glow and stick out from all the other guys when we met each other, right? So by shutting that down, if she said, okay, well, we're going to structure our life in the point where you never get a chance to go to the gym, well, guess what? You're diminishing my light. So that happens in all kinds of different ways in our relationships. And so, for me, I think that it's very important that we understand that about each other, and that we give guys the tools to say, look, like, you're important too. Yes. Now, in a lot of homes, and a lot of, depending on what your background is, men are tasked with being the head of the household, and so that doesn't mean that you're taking a position of authority or that you're more than your wife. In my mind, it's this man has created this society that we find ourselves dwelling in and day out. And there's some cool stuff out there, but then there's some nasty stuff out there too. And so if you're precious to me, if I consider you something sacred, then I want to get out in front of you and clear a path out and minimize any dangers, any threats to you, so that you can go and do a beautiful, beautiful thing in your life and mine.
Amen.
So everybody go buy the book. Get it now.
Yes. I'm going to go back on mute now.
Ashley, you are an owner of the company. You don't have to mute yourself if you don't want to.
I'm only on mute because I'm eating, okay?
Fair. Okay, so Jane, we've talked about this quite a bit now. We've talked about doubters in the magic space. I assume you get a fair amount of that. It's not uncommon when we're talking about magic for people to associate it with this very specific thing, right? Whether it's like the Halloween version of a witch or a black cat, or like my boyfriend still makes jokes all the time about how I'm a witch and I like should have my cauldron of potions. And like for some people it might be that is the thing that it is. But talk to us about what you do when people either put you in a box you don't feel like you fit in, or they approach you with fear or doubt, and what you do to kind of stay grounded, and then also how to interact with that.
Absolutely. That's a great question. And there's a couple, like, choose your own adventure here, right? A big thing is like, there's my business and there's your business. And sometimes you can generally tell, you can read the energy. And there's some people who they think what they think, and they're perfectly welcome to that. And I have no interest in arguing with anybody or trying to like convince people. But I'm always happy to have a conversation with people who want to have a conversation. Because a lot of people just generally have no idea what it is I do. And then I use words like spectrometer, and it just is like goes further away, which is totally understandable. I have like, there's only about 100 of the cameras that I use. So it is an extremely niche thing.
100 in the world.
Produced since the 70s. Yeah. And like, it's a thing that used to be in the corner at a metaphysical shop. I mean, that's the first time I had it done was about 16 years ago in a magic shop. And I had no idea what aura was. I was like, well, look at this crazy camera. Of course, I really need to do this. So, you know, I understand. I've been in that place where I just don't understand what it is. You know, I'm always happy to have that conversation. The biggest misconception I run into, though, is that people think I'm a fortune teller. Which I'm like, if I was like, I wish I would love to win the lottery.
Yeah.
However, that's like not what I do. And I'm like, generally, if you're looking for a fortune teller or somebody to tell you what to do, I am not the one. You know, but generally people are just curious. And I don't run into many people who are like dead set or on being like, no, this my way is the way. But I get a lot of people who are curious. And, you know, when you talk about energy, when I'm like, well, do you ever think about vibes? And, you know, luckily vibes is a pretty popular term right now. And so people can kind of identify with the idea of vibes and being like, so if you think about the idea of vibes, like, what is a vibe? It's the energy. And we're all energy. And what I'm doing is creating energy. And generally just having conversations like that. Another approach I take is describing what I do as somewhere between a personality test and a mood ring. Because it just really helps people identify with like where the colors are coming from. But also everybody, like a lot of people like personality tests. We're curious folk. You know, we want to know more about what golden girl we are. So why wouldn't you want to see your energy on film?
That's so, and Ashley can speak to this too, but we've started working with Oracle decks and tarot cards, and there is a lot of fear around that when you bring that up if you're not familiar with it. And people have the same assumption that I'm like trying to tell the future, or like I can tell when their child's going to be born or they're going to pass on or whatever. And really we're using it to create the magic of introspection, of like really intentional, focused introspection. Whether it's like we've pulled a card that scares us or that we didn't want to see. It's just a way for us to ask ourselves an informed, structured question where before there probably wasn't any structure to what we were trying to get to. But we deal a lot with fear. And so we spend a lot of time explaining what it's not so that we can explain what it is. And generally, if we describe it as like, we'd say it's a thought exercise.
Yeah. And
then people can kind of get on board and understand it a little bit better. But I think there's this theme around magic can be really divisive. And Alexa, you can probably speak to this too. I know you have some familiarity in this area too. But it's a tool, like just like Michael is using, or Alexa's using, or Jane is using, or we're using. It's a tool that you can use or not use.
Exactly.
There's no reason to fear it.
Yes. And I think that that's really great. I agree. I use the word tools a lot. I'm like, you know, it's all tools for self-knowledge, and you get to do whatever you want with the information. In some of my readings, I use oracle cards as well. And so, you know, for people who are like not really familiar about oracle cards or like have some sort of fear around them, I think of it as a prompt. That's another word I use. And I think it's really along the lines with what you were saying with introspection is, you know, it's this prompt, it's this idea, and you can either decide it relates to you or doesn't relate to you. But either way, you're learning valuable information about yourself.
Yeah.
And I say as well, like when people are really weirded out by our tarot cards, we like, it's not any different from your crystal or your sage or your incense. I mean, it's a part of this ritual. And again, it's a resource, it's a tool.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think when you think about this kind of stuff, it's just as spiritual as you are, right? Like the oracle cards that you're reading can be your psychological exercise you got from your therapist, or they can be like God speaking to you through that specific medium, or however you're interpreting that. So I think that's something really interesting to keep in mind as we talk about magic, is thinking about people's different spiritual backgrounds and how they apply it.
Absolutely. And, you know, I have like a group of pastors that actually come see me. And we do the photos and the oracle readings. And it is so fascinating to do readings for people who their life is built on spirituality and working in the spiritual community. But, you know, these ideas of they're like, it's all energy. And why wouldn't I want more tools to know the most about myself and about my world? And I always have really appreciated that idea of being like, why wouldn't I want the most options for just getting information?
I literally just looked up in the middle of you talking, and every single person is like, every person is nodding.
Jane, I love what you're saying too about it being a prompt, because I think that our bodies send us those prompts too. Like we can get them from the outside world, from an oracle deck, or from aura photography, and that's a tool for introspection. And then our bodies send us messages too, that we can receive in our physical beings. And that's something that I deal with a lot in my practice of seeing patients. And I remember I had a teacher who said that physical symptoms are just your body's way of getting your attention and calling your attention to what the real problem is. And I'll give you an example from myself. Just last week, I was up all night, one night last week, sick at my stomach and having all kinds of digestive problems. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the digestive system, every organ system has a related emotion, and the system related to the digestion is worry. And I had literally worried myself sick over what to do about my business with coronavirus. Do I close? Do I try to stay open? And all of this worry and rumination had literally made me sick and had impacted my digestive system in that way. And so we get, I think magic is just those prompts that we get from within or externally, and then it's our responsibility to do something with that.
Alexa, you've like perfectly segued me into what I was going to ask you. So thank you for making me look good there. But so you've had your company now for 10 years, and now you have 2. You used to do refugee work, which I would love for you to touch on a little bit. And on a daily basis, you're dealing with people who are having some pretty major health issues. And through all that, you are one of the most positive, grounded people I've ever met in my life. How do you stay inspired and moving forward when you're literally worrying yourself sick and when the stuff gets really hard?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't worry myself sick very often. It's a really extraordinary time.
These are extreme circumstances at work.
Yeah, actually, you're right. My first job out of college was working with refugees. I was a case manager for a refugee resettlement program. And I was the person going to the airport in the middle of the night, picking people up when they're getting off the plane, coming to their new country, and taking them to their very small and sparsely furnished apartment. I was working with people at some of the most difficult times in their lives. And I've always just wanted to be of service to people. And so that gradually developed into a career as an acupuncturist. And really how I stay grounded is by connecting with that desire to be of service And so in my job, I really have two roles. One is clinician and doing direct patient care, and then the other is being the owner of my business. And so with clinical care, it's really focused work one-on-one, and then as the business owner, my work is much more expansive. But what always keeps me grounded is seeing patients. And anytime I'm not feeling great, I always feel much better after working a busy clinic shift and seeing patients. And to me, because it connects me with why I am doing what I'm doing and why I'm taking on the stress of being a business owner and dealing with all of the other weird stuff that comes along with that. When I'm seeing patients, I get to connect one-on-one with those people who are directly benefiting from what I'm doing. And it's just a good reminder of why I do what I do. So really working with patients grounds me. And then that gives me the energy and the excitement and the enthusiasm then to go back to my office and do the more expansive work and think, okay, when can we open another clinic? Who's the next acupuncturist I'm going to hire? How can we expand our hours? How can we reach more people? What do we need to be doing to stay in touch with people? So I think my role as the business owner is really to create more environments and opportunities for that one-on-one magic to happen, because that interaction between practitioner and patient, there is a magic there, and the patient gets something out of it, but so does the practitioner. Like I said, I always feel better after I treat patients, and so I get something out of that interaction too. And so I'm always looking for more ways and more environments where that magic can happen, because I really believe that magic happens in community. Magic happens when we're interacting with one another. And it's cool because you also don't have to be a business owner to do this. Like, anybody can create opportunities for magic. I mean, I just think if you've ever thrown a party, then you have done this. You have created an environment for magic to happen. And, think of the parties that you've gone to in your life and the cool people you've met at those parties. Somebody threw that party. Somebody created that environment for magic. So we can all do that regardless of what our jobs are or whether we own businesses or not. But yeah, I mean, I truly believe that really community is the key to magic. And I also think that an important element is letting go of expectations, and that's so hard, and letting go of outcomes. And you have a vision for what your outcome is going to be, and then you have to let go of it, because something else is likely going to happen that's going to be just as magical and maybe even more so in unexpected ways. So that's a real challenge for me, and something that I have to practice a lot is letting go of outcomes. But when I do, I'm usually pleasantly surprised.
I am pleasantly surprised with your perfect segues this evening, because I was literally about to ask Michael about expectations and how we deal with the relationships in our lives right now when we're working. Some of us are working alone. Some of us are either pleasantly and sometimes not so pleasantly sequestered with our significant others. What tips and tricks, practical magic, do you have for us right now as we're dealing with expectations and not communicating them clearly, and having to create relationships when things are scary and we're in survival mode?
Well, so yeah, two things that I'll hit on the expectations things first. That is so important to understand that ultimately when we put expectations out there, that's our way of like trying to control what I think ultimately know is uncontrollable, and ultimately you're always going to be let down. I saw this quote, I forget what it said. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but basically the expectations are a burden and that they're ultimately only going to cause you stress. And so the other challenge to that is also when you have expectations, what you've done is you've put this box out here and you've said that, okay, if I've got expectations for my business, if I've got expectations for my romantic relationships, for my friendships, my relationships with my family, they can only happen this particular way, and so, and when they don't, when all these things start happening outside of the box, then you're frustrated, then your sense of control is left out. And also the challenge with that is that you ultimately limit the possibilities for your dreams to come true, for your relationships to be positive, all these great things to happen. So that's one of the things I always warn people, particularly when you're dealing with other human beings, because we are so fluid and so dynamic that we will we will turn direction on you in a heartbeat. And so that's what I would say about the expectations is that, yeah, it's tough because particularly in a time like this when there's so much fear out there, and fear usually comes from things that you don't understand. We were looking at this program, and this doctor was talking about one of the reasons there's so much fear and panic out there is that we've heard the word new, that this is a new virus. And so with new means there's a lack of information. And so when you don't know something, then you start reaching for things that you control, hence toilet paper disappearing, off the shelves. But as it pertains to your second part of the question, I think what we need to do is, get really, really lean here in our understanding and just stick to the basics. The first thing I want to say is, look, everybody's having their own experience out here. Everybody's having their own reaction. And so I think what's going to be helpful is to be able to engage each other and connect, and give each other space, and a safe spot, if you will, to be able to talk about that experience, because in my personal experience now, my wife's at home. She's a corporate attorney. And so she's on conference calls all day. And now I get to hear what that looks like all day because the house echoes. And like I said, also I have 2 kids and everything. So there's, even as we speak, I'm surprised nobody said anything, but there's feet, stomping and yelling and screaming and all this other stuff. So when you're sitting down trying to be thoughtful and think, okay, how can I come up with some new content or something like that? It's a little straining, but what I'll have to do is always just remind myself, okay, look, everybody is in this house is making transitions. Everybody has to, we have to give some grace, and give each other some time to be able to connect. And also the other thing, I feel like out of all this, we're focused on what we're losing in a lot of situations, but I also want people to focus on what we can gain out of the situation. Is that I was talking to a guy the other day who's in one of my groups, and I said, think about the fact that if you live in Murfreesboro, being that you're working at home now, you just picked up probably 2 hours in your day. So what can you do with that extra savings? Think of it as, finding an extra $20 in your couch or something like that. What are you going to do with that time? So use that to invest in, your relationship with your wife. Maybe you and your wife haven't had the time to have those important conversations that you've been dodging for weeks or months because you're always, 2 ships passing in the night, or, everybody's like this, 6 inches away from your mate, but everybody's 10,000 miles away from each other. So being able to take that time, give each other permission to talk about how this is impacting you, and do your best to try to align with each other. But then, like I said, also take advantage of the opportunities that this has given us. I think that for a lot of people, while everybody's day-to-day has been shaken up, I think people are going to get a real good hard look at the things that are really important to them in their lives. And we will take this into this new normal, with a renewed sense of conviction about the things that are important in our lives.
Yeah. I love that you brought up that everyone's having their own experience, because I think that that's like a very obvious thing that is really easy to lose sight of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if all of you or any of you are familiar with the Enneagram, but it's like a personality assessment tool. And I always look at the memes because they're hilarious and that, they stereotype in a way that resonates with me. But I was reading mine today, and there was someone had posted like ways to know that you are in survival mode and not thriving, and then a list for each of the different types. And I read mine and I was like, yeah, I'm like somewhere in the middle. And then I read my partner's, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. He's like really struggling through this too. Especially like he's working from home, but I'm a small business owner. There's a lot of insecurity. There's a lot of fear. And I had gotten really caught up in my own panic, and I had forgotten that he was also in survival mode. And that little dose of perspective was both awakening and a little bit humbling for me today.
Yeah, and sometimes just, like I said, just engaging each other, sometimes that gives you a brief, moment to exhale from your own stuff, and to be able to give your partner, or your loved ones, whoever it is you're close to, give them an opportunity to sort of get some of the static off of them as well. And anytime you can help somebody, anytime you can, just give a kind word, or sometimes you don't even have to say anything. It's just you being in that space, knowing that somebody that you care about, or somebody who is important to you, is just there with you while you're going through this. That can create magic, if we're honest. I mean, that can create peace, that can create create harmony in a relationship, and any other number of positive things. So
Yeah, that intentional flip of perspective is
Mm-hmm.
what I really consider daily magic. Like everyday magic to me is seeing a situation, getting really mired in one definition of it, and then intentionally flipping that to see it either from someone else's perspective, or to get a new direction on it, or to start thinking about it differently. And we had talked about on one of our podcasts about like diversity and inclusion was about trying to learn other people's stories. There is real deep magic in pulling yourself outside of your own ego to see, especially in a relationship when you're quarantined in a small space for an extended period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think by doing that, by having new conversations, you're mathematically increasing the possibilities for yourself and for your relationships. And certainly, I mean, that's true in one-to-one relationships. It's also true in communities. So the fact that, if I can reach out to, somebody, who's, from another country, and just have a basic conversation about, hey, how are you doing through all this? How's your family doing? Like, that's one thing that I always ask people anytime I interact with them, much to the chagrin of my kids, because sometimes I'll hold up the line at Target, because I'm talking to the cashier. She's like, oh, somebody actually like saw me, somebody actually connected with me. And so, but they'll be like, oh, there goes dad again, but, for them, that gives me a charge, if you will, and you can always, see the smile on somebody else's face as well. But you can always continually learn. And that for me, like just as a human being, I feel like we should all try our best to try to fall in love with learning, just in general, learning more about yourself, learning more about other people, and just understanding like one concrete fact, which is like we're in relationship with everything. You're in relationship with your partner. I'm in relationship with my wife, but I'm also in relationship with my environment. I have a relationship with food, that's love and hate. You may have a relationship with your health. You may have you're in a constant state of relationship. And so, to Alexa's point about the yin and the yang moving, or like, which is why I'm loving like the panels and all the skill sets here and everything, because I see that like everything is connected. And I think that, the way that we can move forward, in our communities and healing and building inroads together is just understanding that those things are connected. And so while you've just always been staying on your street, it's like, hey, come out of your neighborhood and see what's going on 2 blocks over, because you might be surprised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my vote is that the three of you start a podcast together and we can just listen to this all the time.
It sounds like you threatened me with a good time.
Well, since we're talking about tools right now, and we've already gotten so much good advice, I want to open it up to the three of you, and I want to start with Jane. I talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but when I met you, I just immediately was like, that girl's magic. There is something about her that I am so drawn to, and I want to be her best friend immediately. And Ashley was like, Elizabeth, you're being weird. Go talk to her. I did, and here we are. But you have a very magnetic personality. Talk to us about the tools you use to stay charged up, to stay invigorated. What rituals, what are you doing to get there?
First of all, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I do equate part of that, at least, to being a former teacher. And after having to keep the attention of 30 second graders at one time, you kind of learn to be like, la, la, la. So I feel like a lot of that carries over into my personality. But, you know, a huge thing for me also, because I walk a really weird line of I'm a very extroverted introvert, and I love people, and I love being of service, and then I am done. And I need to be alone.
That's Ashley too, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm glad to see.
Yeah, we've got a lot of hands up here.
But it took me so long to really like figure out that I needed that balance. A huge thing for me for being able to recharge has been a meditation practice. I meditate at least once a day. Another big thing has been journaling. I like the Joan Didion quote where she's like, I often don't know my own thoughts until I write them down. Sometimes it really feels like that. You know, from spending a lot of time working in the corporate world, I've always been volunteering a lot. And then like having my own things, just journaling has been so valuable for me to really like express it, get it out there, see these patterns that are forming. And just the idea of like, once it's on paper, it doesn't have to be in my head anymore. And those two practices have always been really great. But the other thing that I think like really keeps me bubbly is curiosity, is following my curiosity, engaging with my curiosity. You know, I've always been a curious person. And if I talked about my career, I started off building puppets professionally. And then I like became a teacher. And then I did corporate social responsibility for big tech. And I've had all these like really strange jobs or like strange career transitions. And it's because I followed my curiosity. And that has been a huge thing for me and a huge practice that I really try to ask people about is like, what are they curious about? And it's generally what lights them up. And how can you bring more of that into your life?
And we might be the same person. We might be the same person.
Dun, 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 the more you know.
You guys, we have a couple questions, and so I want to get to those before and still leave some time for Sara to play because she's incredible. So Kiva, will you unmute yourself and undo your video and put your video back up and ask your question because I love it.
Oh, okay. I had to go get in some better light. So my question was basically, how do you all feel in regards to the pandemic that's going on, and how normally they say when physically you're dealing with something to kind of focus in on that chakra. So this pandemic is dealing with the throat, the lungs, that area, which is the throat and heart chakras. How do you all kind of, I guess, interpret it or feel that, you know, is this like a sign that the world should really get more focused on, you know, themselves and love and, you know, everything that those chakras represent? I'm gonna go off now.
Okay. So I love where you're going with this. I hadn't really thought about like the pandemic in terms of chakras yet. I think that yes, you have some really great points, like focusing on the heart chakra. A huge thing. I think this is really a call to the root chakra as well, the base chakra, because when you think about you know, root systems grow, they take time to nourish, and the root chakra is the chakra that is in relationship to community. And in my opinion, what has allowed this, you know, virus to really flourish the way that it has been our lack of community. The ways that our community is out of balance. And I think that there's really something to that. Now, I do think that there's also something, right? Like there's this interesting duality between the idea of the heart chakra, right? Love, and root chakra, base chakra, this idea of community. And how much more love do our communities need? And where is that balance between building this great connection that's built off a place of love, that's built from a place of abundance rather than scarcity? Because a big thing that's really come up for me thinking about in more abstract or metaphysical terms with the idea of this pandemic has been the idea of how scarcity is flourishing and how can we return to abundance.
Michael, you talked about the scarcity mindset too last time we talked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that, sort of trailing off of what Jane just said, I think that if we look at how the public has operated in the last 2 or 3 weeks on two levels, one, this idea of people who are being led by fear, instead of being led by love, like it's clear in your actions. Like your actions are a direct manifestation of what you think, right? And so for me, it's been, sort of seeing two sides of the coin in the sense that we've seen what happens when people are fearful, when they panic, and how they're reacting to all this stuff. But I'll also want to highlight the fact that with the tornadoes a couple of weeks ago over in North Nashville, we've got some investment properties over there. And so, we were affected, with our properties getting damaged and everything. But that Tuesday morning, when I walked over there to check on all my tenants and everything, I was just floored by the amount of people that just poured into that community, just from everywhere, no plan or anything. People were just like, I'm here, just tell me what you need. So I think it's been a very telling sign of where we're at, as a community. I mean, it's very easy to just, get your information from one direction. And you would think that, all human beings are terrible and everything. But then you could also look in the other direction and say, oh, well, there's some people that think everything's all sunshine. And it's like, no, like we're in a mess, but I feel like there are a lot of people out there who are ready to help. I feel like there's a lot of love out there that is waiting to be poured out. We just have to get together. Like you said, we just need to come together, lock hands with people that you've never locked hands with before. That's why I think it's important for everybody to get outside the bubble, which is one of the reasons I'm excited to be on this call, because I've met a couple of people on this panel, but there's several folks that I want to go and have a conversation with, like Alexa, like, yeah, break your needles out. I want to come holler at you because I'm curious about that. But, we have to draw our circle really, really wide, and not put limits on where help can come from, not put limits on, where love can come from, So I just think that there's a huge set of opportunities for us to be able to come together and counter these narratives of scarcity, counter these narratives of mistrust and despair. Just say, look, we can't always wait on the Lone Ranger to come riding over the hill, to save us. A lot of us have what we need already, just within our own hands.
That's great. You guys, let's give a round of applause in whatever way that suits you right now for our panel. We're so, so, so grateful that they are all here. I love what Michael just said about casting a wide net. I think that's really important right now. And I actually think it's easier than we think it's going to be. I think you find that when you cast that net so wide, it makes life a lot more interesting. So here's to casting a wide net. Thank you to our panelists. Cheers if you have a drink. I want to introduce cheers. I want to introduce Sara. Sara, will you, do you have your video and your sound unmuted?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
So really quickly, I just want to introduce Sara because she is one of my dearest friends. We met when we were failing French class together in college. We sat in the middle like embarrassed baby. Everyone else around us was doing great and we didn't know what page to turn to. But I've watched her journey as an artist and a musician really evolve, and as a person too. And I'm so incredibly proud of her and the music that she makes. And I'm thrilled that she's doing this. We're going to ask that everyone turns off their video while she plays, unless you want everyone to keep it on.
That's fine.
just because we're gonna record this, and so
I
we'll.
feel like it'll be less awkward if I could actually see faces and I'm not
Okay,
just
well then keep your faces up.
to the nothing.
Keep your faces up, but everyone but Sarah will mute. And then if you guys have questions for our panel that you didn't get to, go ahead and type them in here, and they can either respond in real time or we will get it to them. And we're gonna send out a recording, a link to this recording, and then also answer any additional questions. So unless there are questions now, let's go ahead and let Sarah introduce herself and get started. And I am going to mute myself now.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi everybody. I'm also doing it on Instagram. Hey, I'm with TRILUNA doing some live stuff for their magic in hard times. Is that right?
Yeah.
Close enough.
Perfect.
Supper Club panel. Yeah, my name's Sara Jean Kelley. I'm born and raised in Nashville. Sorry, I'm at my mom's house right now, so there's a bird in this room with me. I decided today to do some new songs that I've never played before because I feel like a big open wound right now, and I feel like a lot of people are feeling that way as well. Because just the idea that life is so fragile is being thrust upon all of us in such a extreme way right now. So I just decided that I'm gonna like lean into that energy instead of hide from it, which I think is something that I don't know anything. All right, this is a new one. Falling from the treetops where the earth stops into the well, swimming in the darkness through the abyss of where you fell. Can you climb? Can you find your way out? It's not all the same. It's not just what you name. When the creatures in your head come the monsters under your bed. Baying at the moonlight in the dead of night, looking up, praying for an answer, where a moment of silence is enough. Can you sing? Can you bring yourself to listen? It's not all the same. It's not just what you name. When the creatures that you know come the reasons you can grow. Oh, hi, everybody. Thanks. All right. It's so weird doing new songs because you're like, I have no idea if this is good or not. But I'm trusting my instincts here. This is my newest one. What if everything fell apart tomorrow? What if love just a lie? What if you and me were fated for sorrow, never truly satisfied? I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready for the end. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready for the end of this story. I could give my all, I could try my hardest, I could ask the same of you. Would it be enough to heal the hardness from where our fortress grew? I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready for the end. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready for the end of the story. I see in my dreams, and I read it in the stars. Story that is ours. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready for the end. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready for the end. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready for the end of our story. Thanks. I don't know, Elizabeth, do you have a request? I don't know.
Okay, you did a cover at your CD release party. I liked that. It was really fun. And then the one about the cowboys.
Okay. We're gonna do. So I don't know how to play that song. You're talking about the Jonas Brothers song?
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for you. I never actually learned how to do that song. Play it.
Yes. Jonas Brothers.
Also the cowboy one. You know what I'm talking about?
Cowboy.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Wait a second. Take me to the wild where the creeks are running high and the sky is wide above. Take me in your arms where I'll never fear the harms of a broken, sordid love. I need a canvas cowboy, take the reins, be my guide, we ride. Out here on my own, I've been wandering so long and I never found a home. Rolling like a tumbleweed, wild horses carry me on we roam. I need a cowboy. I need a cowboy. Take the reins, be my guide. We ride. I want to run. I want to be free. But I need a cowboy. I need a cowboy. Take the reins, be my guide. We ride. Take the reins, side by side, and we ride.
Sarah, I think we have time for one more, and if you don't mind, I would really love if you would end on Monster, because I think it's a perfect creepy magic song to end on.
Hey, it's my magic song. I love it. Yes.
The song.
So I have a music video for this song, and I also all these songs are like the last, this one and the next one, the last one and the next one are on Spotify and all the whatever platforms under my latest EP that came out in October called The Wild. And speaking of magic, magic to me is the essence of wildness. I find my magic in going outside, talking to plants and talking to animals and having communion with the natural world. And that is really important to me. It always really has been. And yeah. And this is my song, Monster. You can watch the music video. It's very magical. Did I wake you up? Did I make you cry? Did I keep your demons alive? Did I cut you open, looking inside? Did you hear that bump in the night? What's that other corner of your eye? You never really know just what you'll find. In the darkness, nothing's as it seems. Coming to you straight out of your dreams. I'm a monster. and my claws so long and thin. Can you feel my fangs sinking? Oh, did you hear the devil call you in? Did you see my eyes red like the sun? Did you feel the poison from my tongue? You the siren singing songs we sung. In the darkness, nothing's as it seems. Coming to you straight out of your dreams. I'm a monster. I'm a monster. An imposter. I'm a monster. I'm a creature in the deep. I'm a rustle in the forest trees. I'm the creeps up in your attic on your radio. I'm the static. Don't you go into your closet. I'm the leaves coming on your faucet. Now you hear that werewolf howl. Yo, that's just me out of the ground. I'm a monster. I'm a monster. Imposter. Oh, yeah. 'Cause I'm a monster. Yeah. I'm your monster. I'm a monster. You made a monster. Now I'm your monster. I'm a monster. I'm a monster. I'm a monster. I'm a monster. Thanks for having me.
Yay! Thank you, Sarah. You guys, Sarah is truly one of the wildest, freest people I've ever met in my life, and she is kind of constantly inspiring me to step outside of my severe type A-ness and to live a freer life. Thrilled to have her. You can get her album on Spotify, like she said. I highly encourage you to go listen to Monster right now with all of the accoutrement that goes along with it. It's really incredible. I get chills every time I hear it. I'm going to let Ashley close us down, but I really quickly will each of the panelists, if you're still accessible, tell everyone where they can find you and how they can support you. And all of the panelists on here, Sarah included, we're all small business owners. We're all trying to make it work right now with all this change. How can they find you? How can they support you? What do you need? Michael, you want to start?
Oh, yeah, sure. So you can find me on social media at The Pro Husband. If you want to contact me directly, you can contact me at michael@marriagedeclassified.com. I'll say that again because it's a little long. Michael@marriagedeclassified.com. And I encourage you to go to visit my website, www.prohusband.net, where you can learn more about me, my platform, and how I can help you in your relationship.
Boom. I felt like that was necessary right there.
Alexa, Jane?
Jane again. So one of the easiest ways to find me is Instagram. I'm at Tertiary Site, which is TERTIARY site. I hope I spelled that right. It's going to be really embarrassing. But generally, you can find me on there. I'll be posting updates about my shop. So just come see me if you'd like to once we're able to open again. And I also have a website. I have a newsletter you can sign up for if you would like more information. You can always shoot me an email, jane@tertiarysite.com. And thank you for having me tonight.
And you can find me and Encircle Acupuncture online at our website, which is Encircle with an E, encircleacupuncture.com. And people sometimes misspell acupuncture. There's only one C in acu. So encircleacupuncture.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. And right now, since we are not seeing patients, we're trying to share a whole lot of self-care tips on social media. So we're sharing some self-acupressure videos on social media. Tomorrow, one of our staff members is doing a live Qigong demonstration on Facebook at noon, so you can follow along. And if you've never done Qigong before, it's wonderful for energy movement and for breathing, which we all need to breathe right now. So tune in on Facebook tomorrow for Qigong. And the way that you can support us right now is just by taking care of yourselves, first of all, and then just keeping up with us on social media. We want to be back in our clinics really soon, and so we'll keep everybody posted on social media as we know more.
Well, again, thank you guys so very much. These are just some of our very favorite people, and we are so excited that we were able to still have this. I mean, I was pretty convinced that we were going to figure out a way to make this. I told Liz, we have all these great people, we got to figure out what we're going to do. So thank you guys for jumping on here with us and making it happen. Thank you to the community for showing up for us. Thank you for your donations. You guys have no idea how much, for first of all, you know, the love. So thank you. We appreciate it. We really, really do. As far as TRILUNA goes, you can be on the lookout. Next week, we have some very powerful workshops that we're going to be offering via Zoom. The first one is going to be a meditation for stress management. It comes with curriculum, and Liz and our community manager, Casey, will be running that workshop. That's at 6:30 next Tuesday. It's a workshop full of information that we need to know about our nervous system right now to help us get through what we're going through. And I know my team, they're going to throw in some meditation. They're going to throw in some stretches for you. They're going to make it all good and yummy and all that good stuff. So make sure you tune into that. Also on Friday, this one's a big one. Right now, it's a lot of trauma going on, right? Where if this is not affecting you personally, maybe it is affecting something that has happened that's pulling up old trauma, maybe new trauma, old trauma, whatever it is, we're going to touch on that. And so next week, we're going to have our certified trauma-informed certified instructor, Jimmy Burke, on next Friday at 6:30. And again, you get curriculum, things that we want you to be able to take things away with you after to be a resource to you. And, you know, make sure that you're tuning in and making sure that you're following us on the gram, on Facebook, and we have our podcast, You're Excused. We're going to be releasing a new one on Monday about ways that you can take care of yourself right now. So make sure that you're tuning into that. Again, we are so, so grateful to all of you. And I guess I'll leave it on the 3 words that matter to us most: wellness, community, and magic. I love you all, and have a good night.
Thank you, guys. We'll send this video and then some resources and links to everybody's stuff. So thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. Good night.
Bye.